Merry Christmas. It is Christmas morning, and I hope and pray that you are experiencing a wonderful Christmas, that you're gathered together with the ones that you love, and that you've had a restful morning. I know that's impossible if you have children, but I hope that you've had a festive, wonderful morning. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Christmas story, a little bit of what my wife and I are going through, because I know other church members are going through this same thing, and maybe it will all make sense. Let's see. I'm so grateful for Luke because he gives us an incredible birth narrative, a lot of detail, a lot of material that would have been lost for the ages. Luke was a scientist, and he understood the importance of factual data. He understood the importance of primary sources. So he went right back to the primary source. One of his primary sources was, of course, Mary herself. She experienced Christmas in a way that you and I could never understand. She was there. She was a participant. She gave birth. She held that child. She felt the cold. She saw the angels. She heard them sing. She saw the shepherds. She was a central character in everything. So I can only imagine when Luke sat down to write this gospel some 45 to 50 years later, that her memory was pristine. First of all, the fact that Luke wrote his gospel so late, and the fact that Mary would still have been alive to have been a part of these interviews, meant that she ended up living longer than women in the day did. We tend to think about biblical characters living hundreds of years, but because of the standard of living in Israel, Mary would have been an old woman. But these things she remembered. And I think part of that was the prompting of the Holy Spirit. I think part of it is you don't forget the events surrounding the birth of a child. Now, there's a passage that's almost lost in Luke chapter 2. I want to read it to you. Beginning in verse 36. Now remember, they have come to the temple, and on the 8th day they have come to circumcise him and to give him the name Jesus, Yeshua, Joshua, the God who saves. And they run into a prophetess named Anna, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. She was very old. She lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage, and then was a widow until she was 84. Once again, an extraordinarily old person for that day and time. She never left the temple, but worshiped night and day, fasting and praying. Coming up to them at that very moment, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. When Mary had done everything required by the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee to their own child, and that child grew strong. Now, here is what Simeon says right before that. Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, "This child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too." You want to say to Simeon, Merry Christmas. I mean, are these the words that you speak to a brand new mother, that you prophesy over her in this child, and you talk about the greatness and how he is going to be used to change hearts, but that message is not going to always be well received, and that there will be a sword that will pierce her own soul? Mary, I think, remembered those words often in the adult life of Jesus. When she heard those things said about him, she must have remembered that prophecy. When she watched him crucified on the cross, she must have felt that her own soul had been pierced with a sword. She remembered that was all part of it. The truth is, for most people watching this video today, Christmas is a win-win. It's all good. Your life is going well. you have your family around, things are good. But I know for many people in this church, they lost loved ones this year. And this will be their first Christmas without that loved one. My pastor growing up was a man named Dr. Laney Johnson. And he used to always pray a prayer. And I remember whispering under my breath, I'm embarrassed to admit it now, when he said this prayer, I whispered to a friend of mine, Buzzkill, because he would say this prayer every year, and it frustrated me. He said, and God, remember those for whom there is an empty chair at the table for the first time. For me, 13, 14, 15, I'm like, hey, Christmas is all good. Let's just celebrate. Why do we have to bring grief into the occasion? But like the Christmas story itself, when Mary remembers, she doesn't remember only the good things. She also remembers that that was the first time that she knew that this life of hers would not be easy, and at the end of the day, her own soul would be pierced by a sword. There's a movie I love, Big Fish, and in that movie, there's a chance where they can look into the eye of a witch and they can know how they die. And when I talk about that with my students, I say, would you make that choice? Do you want to know? About half of them say, absolutely, I want to know. And the other half go, no, it would change the way I live. Most of us don't want to know that there's a heartache coming. There was an old wise preacher that I heard one time who said, if life is going good for you, great, celebrate. But if life is tough, know that God is with you. And he said, now some of you are looking at me like, what is he talking about? I said, for some of you, he would say, for some of you, life hadn't been hard yet. Keep living. Keep living, and life will catch up with you. If you live long enough, you understand that grief and heartache is just a part of this existence. I remember Christmas. I remember Christmas at 609 Thule Circle in Longview, Texas. I remember the Christmas tree. I remember the gifts. I remember playing music. If you remember vinyl records on an old stereo that looked like a piece of furniture with speakers on the side. And back then there were Christmas albums that Firestone, I think, put them out, and Andy Williams and Bing Crosby. And my mother would play those for days leading up to Christmas. And my father on Christmas Eve reading the Christmas story. And all those memories that were associated with Christmas were so good for me. And I celebrated those. But then there was a time in college when I had an illness, and one Christmas I was couldn't get out of bed. I was ill, and I remember Christmas being very difficult. And for a couple of years after that, Christmas just didn't feel like Christmas. But then you have children of your own, and suddenly the magic of Christmas reappears, and you're right back in that same shape. One thing that I'll always be grateful for is that being a Christian and being on staff most of my adult life, being on the staff of a church, meant that Christmas was central to everything that we did. The worship services, the Advent candles, the preparation, the thinking, the music, the singing. I remember when I was at Jersey Village Baptist, the Foundry would sing the Messiah, and they would invite community members to come and be a part of that. And what an incredible gift that was. So I guess my message to you today is the same message of that old minister. I hope and pray for you that all is good and that everything is incredible and that life has not been hard for you at all. But for some of you, I, I feel your pain. I know some of you lost loved ones 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and some of you lost loved ones either right before Christmas or right after Christmas, and it hasn't felt the same way. I want to give you a word of encouragement today. I hope you notice that I'm sitting in a rocking chair in front of a fireplace. That was not accidental. This rocking chair was made by Kim's dad and her mom. Kim's dad died in January, right after Christmas, but he was ill through the Christmas season. Kim's mom loved Christmas, and this is our first Christmas without her mom. She passed away in May. Christmas is still good, but at times you're kind of overwhelmed with that feeling of, oh my. This chair used to sit in her front room before we came to live with her, and this is the chair I would always sit and rock in. So it's one of my best memories of talking to her. It still has a place in our heart and in our home, and it sits in the study, a reminder of her and her presence. She loved a fire. As she got older, she got cold easily. I hate to tell you, those of you who are in middle age, just wait. There are a lot of fun things headed your way, and one of those is you get cold much, much easier. She would get cold, and when it looked wintry outside, she would feel colder even though she was in the warmth of a house. And that meant it was time to make a fire in the fireplace, and she would stand and she would warm herself, and she would just bask in the glow, and it was almost like we couldn't keep it going long enough. On Christmas Day, today, we're going to go to McCormick and Smicks. She loved to eat out on Christmas because oftentimes we were heading to my parents' house, and she still wanted to celebrate Christmas with us. Even though we might be leaving, we couldn't leave on the 24th. We had to wait. Sometimes we went to the Waffle House. It's one of the few places open on Christmas and one of her favorite. The other day, Kim and I ate at a Waffle House just to remember. But on Sunday, we're going to McCormick and Smicks. It's a seafood place. It's owned by Jewish people. Therefore, it is open on Christmas Day. And they serve a wonderful meal with white linen tablecloths, and the food is exquisite, and the service is incredible. And it's just really celebratory. It'll be a time to remember, but it'll also be a time to celebrate all that is good and all that we remember and all that we cherish. Christmas is a combination of all of these things. It is a combination of that which is great. It is a combination of that which is painful. And as I get older, I really appreciate my preacher, Dr. Johnson, for taking time every Christmas to remember that there were those among us who struggled this year. Be honest with you, the last couple of years have been tough. COVID and the economy, and this church went through a very difficult process recently in terms of deciding our future, and that was painful. I've made a choice, and I'm going to ask you to make that same choice. Today is a day to remember. Today is a day to celebrate. Today is a day to give thanks. Today is a day to give thanks for the best gift ever given, the Son of God, Emmanuel, coming to live with us, who gives us hope and joy and peace. But 1 week from today will be New Year's. This is the choice I'm making. I will celebrate the gift of Christmas, and I will choose to forget the pain and the suffering that may have happened in the last 2 to 3 years. Only through Christ can we have a truly fresh start in life. I hope and pray that this Christmas finds you and your family doing remarkably well. That's my Christmas hope for you. But I've talked to enough of you to know that this Christmas is bittersweet. It's a struggle. I want to tell you that the same God that brought the light of lights into the world and the joy of joy into the world will find a way to shatter the darkness in your life and find a way to bring joy to your broken heart. But I also know that we need to meet God on that journey, and we need to make a choice that we will no longer hold on to that with which we struggle, but we give that to God, and by His grace and His mercy and His strength, we will become new people. The next time I will see you will be on New Year's Day. We are going to have an all-in-one service at 10 o'clock in the morning here in the MAC. I look forward to seeing you here. But today is all about Christmas. Today is all about faith, the birth of Christ. It is all about family, being with the people that we love. And it's all about hope, the knowledge and the certainty that God is with us and better days are to come. God bless you and Merry Christmas to you all.